All right, welcome, James Gillett, to Fucking Real, man. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, bro.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been a short period time in preparing this. When we touched base, it was almost instant of like, fuck, we need to tell your story, bro.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is, man. And you know, like I was saying before, like a lot of my podcasts are either pre-planned. I've written down some notes, and we tried to sort of squeeze out the relative, the information that we need out of that particular topic. But today, man, you're one of those special guests, bro, where we're just going to go. We're just going to keep it fucking real, man.
Yeah, definitely, mate.
And fuck, let's get into it, man. So it's a big story. I've heard a lot about you just with that 6PR, just knowing about your past and your background. And I know there's a lot to gather, to talk about here, bro.
Yeah.
The idea, mate, is just we keep it real. But like, let's just start from the beginning, bro. Where do you come from, man? And
I'll start from when I guess the turning point. I think for a lot of people, especially if you're trying to if you put yourself into a hole, most people have it's usually around being a teenager when you start going down a certain path, and for a lot of people that's usually like drugs and whatnot. I grew up in Armadale.
Yep.
So I grew up and I fell into that crowd. I started smoking weed, getting into more of the harder stuff, and then it was more once I started getting onto the gear, then it was pretty much you get older kids that you would sort of, I guess, they just use you go out, you do burglaries, commit stuff, commit crime at a flat out rate just to get on, and that was
You sorry to interrupt, bro, but you make that sound like normal, which I can relate to a lot growing up. But for those, there's a lot of people out there where it ain't so fucking normal. But I guess from that was pretty standard sort of shit at your age, around your area, your groups.
Oh man, in Armadale, bro, it's very standard. It's still the norm now. And what it comes down to is that it's just so low social economical areas. So anywhere like the Armadale, like the Balgas, I mean, even Belmont had a history at one point. There's a lot of that goes around, and a lot of it comes down to it comes down to upbringings and like what people grow up in.
Yeah.
And I think what you find, and I've noticed even doing the mentoring, I've done mentoring at Cecil Andrews Senior High School, which is in Armadale. Some of the kids you speak to, they're like it's like the way that I get labelled, like this is the worst behaved kid in the school, and then you hear about their story, and mum's on drugs, dad's on drugs, they've got mental health issues, their house is getting smashed up, and that kid's getting all that trauma, and they're in a state of fear all the time. And I've been introduced to kids, and I've just looked at them, and it's just been like heartbreaking because you're looking at like the expression, the way that they carry themselves, you can tell that they've just been emotionally destroyed, and then the way like they get treated, and it's like people that don't have an understanding of that. Like there's a lot of finger pointing out. That's why I'm not on social media, is because you get a lot of that in the comment section. People that like to pass judgment. You should never judge a life that you've never lived.
100%, bro. I can't agree with that more, man. Yeah. And the more, and I guess a big part of what I want to. Where I want this to go, man, is to just share light on all the people, on all these areas, man, that a lot of people don't know about, man. That, and they're quite quick to fucking judge.
Yeah.
The way I put it down to is obviously it's education, man. It's the way you've been brought up. And also when you've been brought up with that, they have got a chip on their shoulder is because that's all they see. That's all they know. They don't.
And you get it becomes a feedback loop. Yeah. So when you if you carry yourself or you look like in a certain way, people will treat you according to that, So I had it once. I remember once I was walking home, and I lived in a good part of Armadale, which is Mount Azura. So my family's my dad he lives up there. So I was walking up, and the cops pulled me over, and they pretty much just said to me, and they're going, "What are you doing up here?" Because I was looking like a street kid probably back then. And I just said, I'm just going home. They're going, have you ever been in trouble with the police before? And I said, yeah, I've been done for burglaries. And they go, well, I'll put it to you that I've just seen you jump out of a window over there. And I was like, well, put it to you, that's a false allegation. And they then, they said, what have you been doing? I said, I've just been smoking cones with my mates. And they go, you got any drugs on you now? And I said, if I did, I wouldn't be telling you I just was smoking cones with my mates, But I experienced that, and it's different, because they see it, they've got a label, and I can understand that the police.
It's also hard for them too.
Yeah, exactly. I understand that. Like the thing about police officers is that they always see people at their worst moments. So they go from seeing someone like like person A at their worst moment, then they go to a next job, which is someone else at their worst moment, and so they, you know, like they don't see, and I think that becomes desensitized, and that affects their psyche a fair bit as well. So it's not just
just quickly though, James. Like, I mean, I want to go back to your story and start again, but before we go there, man, just so we're on this topic. Man, if you had a magic wand or you could do anything to sort of help these people in these sort of areas, man, and these kids growing up, bro, because it's fucking sad, bro. And it's fucking, like, man, I almost come to tears when I see kids like that because I know what it's like to, you know, feel it. And I probably only haven't even had it as half as bad as what some of these kids have had, you know?
Well, that's the thing, like, with a lot of those kids, it's the real difficult part of it is, and I've known through even mentoring, you know, I speak to some of these kids, and then like for most people, their dad's their hero. For all the males in their family. If you're a boy, you know, I can't really speak for women because I'm obviously not a female, but with like a lot of the boys, you know, like, so their dad's in jail, and like if your hero's in prison, and then you know, a lot of it is it's almost like they look up to that, you know, like they look up to that pathway. And I remember growing up as a teenager. When you're a teenager, you look up in those sort of areas. I can't speak for other areas, but you look up to the kids that are getting, like, who've got the biggest reputations, because it's all about trying to prove yourself, because kids are very social, you know, like it's all about how they look compared to their friends. The kids that were really out of control were the ones that were the most admired, which then ended up sending you on a different trajectory towards that path. And that's
so if you ask me that question, I would say there needs to be more mentoring. There needs to be a lot more like care and love and understanding, education, you know, all these things into it, rather than being judged. So if there is someone there, you know, and I know there's a lot of people that fucking judge these kids, man. And sometimes when I hear their story, I go, yeah, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but it ain't helping the fucking situation. If there was somebody out there, is there ways that people can get involved to try and somehow help them? You know?
Like you have to get through a working with children's check. So I went through that process, and it was a very difficult process for me when I did that. I did that in 2019. So, you know, over 4 years ago now. And while I was going through that process, like I had to, my whole criminal records, I've got over 30 charges, 6 pages of criminal record, some very serious charges. I've got armed robbery, selling supply, grievous bodily harm, like, you know, all prisonable offences, which I did prison time for. Yeah. And when you go through that process, the whole working with children's check, it's about character and stuff. But it's almost like, if you want to, like,
you need that reputation to get through to some of these kids.
You do. And like, and that's this is the problem. Like when I was in prison, they had a guy that was doing the drug and alcohol course who's never been addicted to drugs or alcohol. So regardless of what the information is, he doesn't have the credibility. So you're just looking at him like you've already switched off. You know, he might be telling you the best info it's about. Yeah. And it's just like anything in life, you know, like for example, you know, if you want to learn how to become a mechanic, you would go see a mechanic and they would teach you. So if you want to learn how to
you're not
better
going to go
yourself,
to a dentist.
Exactly, if you anything, that's a universal law. Like if you want to get better at something, find someone that's already doing it, and then figure out what they've done, and then try and use those same little steps and techniques, because there's gold in that, you know. That's the thing. Like as with kids, if kids that are growing up in that area or who are going for that, I would seriously suggest to put your focus into sports rather than getting into the whole, you know, like the street life and all that sort of stuff. You know, like if you've come from a hard background, like things like boxing and stuff's great. Like the amount of people that's saved around the world, and you just, you know, follow stories. And all you have to do is look up Mike Tyson's story. Exactly. That's a prime example of what you can potentially become, because that when you have gone through stuff in your life and that pain and suffering, like a lot of people, they let it defeat them, but that's because of the perspective that they look at it from. Those hardships actually strengthen you. Yeah. So once you get your mind around that, is that those difficult moments that you've been through have actually strengthened your character. And the fact that you've survived all the things that you have now put you into a position, you know, like where you've got this inner strength. You've just got to learn how to tap into it.
And you said it before as well, and we both shared on it because we felt the same about it. And that's like when you're going through hardship yourself, when you start giving back your strength, like, you know, some of these hard times that we've gone through, now we've got the ability to share on those and help mentor other people, particularly younger people under us, to try and get through those and make better lives of themselves. But the therapy I get from doing it is sort of helps me. It gives me a purpose as well, you know?
It does. And like I notice this when I help people in my own personal life. When you're passing information on to someone and you teach something to someone, you actually retain it. So you're remembering why. And, I've learned about this even at work just recently doing the Cert 1 trainer and assessor at TAFE, which is where I'm currently working. But going into, when it comes to, like pretty much when you reflex information, like if you hear something, there's a 10% chance you'll retain it. Once you start teaching something, then you're at a 95% chance, and there's different levels along the scale, and it's always that's why I always find it's really good. Like I love to help people, and when I'm helping them, they don't realize, they think that it's just a one-way thing, but they're also helping me. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah,
and that's the
especially when you see. I could imagine some of these young fellas, when you're teaching them something and they clicked onto it and they're doing it, it'd be.
It's a huge thing, man. Like it's a growth. Like I've had great money and listening to you. So you've experienced money, and like when you don't have it, that's where you think all the happiness lies. But the happiness lies, man, in watching someone's growth.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like all you have in this world, all you're going to leave with is the impact that you have on others.
Yeah.
And if you've done I've heard a lot of people. I've done a lot of things in my life, and when you get to a certain point, and you start to realize what is it really about. Like when I speak about people that were dear to me that have passed away, like for my grandfather, for example, I don't think about he had this car, or he drove this, or he had this property. It was about the type of man that he was, and I think that's really like a really valuable point, because that's all that really truly matters is the impact that you have on other people.
It's like my young boy, mate. He doesn't look at like our dad's either poor or rich or anything like that. Yeah. He looks at the things that I'm teaching him, and and the values of life, and the principles and whatnot. Yeah. But look, it takes you a while to get used to that. To actually realize that growing up. Because money's just in our face, isn't it? Yeah. And look, let's face it, man. Money is a great tool to have in the tool belt.
Yeah.
Definitely. But it's not everything, man.
No.
You need a lot more to.
And that's And that that led me down a really negative path as well. Because the wanting that money, that power, all those sort of things led me deeper and deeper into crime, and that led me into a lot, that instant gratification.
Let's go there, man. Let's start talking back about your story, bro. Let's know a little bit more about you, bro.
All right. And we'll go. So basically, I went through that process, and I was getting in heaps of trouble. Going through juvenile, got heaps of slaps on the wrist. I did go to juvie for me and my best mate burnt down a house at one point when I was about 15. Went to juvie for that for a little bit, but got out straight away. And it was when I was 18, I got done for multiple armed robberies. So I had it was actually on the force when I got for that particular thing. But so it was one night I was out with some friends and coming from the Armadale ground, and basically it just came down to it got started because I'd taken some ecstasy. So I was on some MDMA, and it was talking about someone going, he's a excuse my language, but a mad cunt. And
you said what you want on
right? So, I was do. All right, so he's so he was talking about a particular person. He goes, he's a mad cunt. He's done armed robberies. I said, but anyone can do an armed robbery. And he's like, you can do it. And I said, prove it. Pull up here. And then I ended up having a spree. And what ended up happening, I did the first armed robbery, and it actually it was such a crazy rush for me. And that's I think what a lot of people don't understand when people get into crime and stuff. There is a rush and thrill that comes out of either pulling something off or committing a crime. And, to deny, to say that it's not true is just, you have to really be honest about it. Yeah. And I did one, and then I did another one. I did 4 in one night, and, I was all over the news. I was, so I ended up getting arrested for that probably about a week later, or a few days later, sorry.
And was it just purely for the rush, man, or was it more?
It wasn't even financial.
Was it drug addiction? Was it money?
Yeah, it was drug. I was under the influence of drugs. Yeah. But to be honest, it was probably more just to prove a point, prove that prove myself.
You got nothing to fucking lose as well.
Exactly. And when it's like when you're a young man, it's all about proving yourself. You're gonna. And that's one of the most important things in the world, and it's something that you have to actually unlearn later in life. But especially if you do go down a dark path, but we'll get to that a bit later. But, so when I actually went in there, it was crazy. I was 18 years old, and I remember going into maximum security adult prison. And then 18. I remember driving there, and I was really scared. I think anyone that says otherwise is either a psychopath or talking shit,
or being there 12 times. And
for your first time, even the guys that went, because once I was seasoned, it wasn't nothing, you know what I mean? Yeah. It was just, it was just another day at the office. But when on your first day and you go in there and you sort of see, and I had people when people first things as soon as they heard that I was in there for multiple armed robberies, I gained some level of respect out of that. But I had 4 dudes come up to me and pretty much like I got tested out. It was like my would have been my second day in prison. I had 4 dudes come up to me and pretty much try and stand over me for my cigarettes. No one, they're like mid-20s. I was only 18 at the time, and I remember just all I could think about was like that's the moment in prison, because you're either in prison, you're either going to be a victim or you're going to be like it's either predator or prey,
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to be a victim, so I just I remember standing my ground and saying no, that's I'm not going to. I pretty much just said to him, no, I'm not giving you fuck all. And then I remember at the time clenching my jaw, because I know that you don't want to have your jaw loose, you're going to get cracked in the jaw.
Yeah.
And stood like toe to toe with this guy, got right up in my face. And then when he seen that he couldn't intimidate me, he goes, I'm just joking. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was 4-on-1, but he, that just shows to show you the bully mentality, sure. They look for their targets, and if they find them, and I've seen it before in prisons as well. Do
you find, like, it's an interesting point what you say there, man? And I actually heard it in another one of your interviews, and it's the whole victim word.
Yeah.
And you can have a victim mentality. I'm not saying, even in the real world, you can be a victim. And a lot of people do carry on a lot of their life just being a fucking victim. There's obviously
it's an identity. It becomes an identity. Like everything does. Oh, the world's this because of this. And don't get me wrong. Like I understand, I empathise that I've been there. But like it ain't going to do you any good. Nah. It's almost the equivalent of like if you stand in the sun all day getting burnt, and you blame the sun. You know. Yeah. So like when you take ownership, that's when you go, all right, you put some sunscreen on. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's as simple as that.
And just to sort of clarify what we're talking about is sort of like where you can sit there going, well, I've come from this background, I've seen this, and I've done that, and I've had a shit life, and fucking poor me, know. And in most respect, in most cases, if you speak to people that's generally coming from that sort of background, you can sit there and go, yeah, fuck yes, especially like some of these kids you were talking about growing up in the areas that you grew up. But you're right, it doesn't help you, man. You got to take ownership of those things that have happened.
I got to a certain point that if I didn't change, because with the state of my criminal record and like the amount of violence and stuff that I had on it, I was starting to look like even though I served nearly 6 years, but like I would have gotten to the point where I'd start getting 10-year sentences in a row. Like I was at that level.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't made those changes, and it really came down to what do you want out of life, A lot of guys
Do you think that's why a lot of people just continue reoffending, back in?
Honestly, I think people have this misconception, but like most people actually really do want to try and sort their shit out when they get out. They all want to like actually do better. Like it's not like they have this like can't wait for the next score. Don't get me wrong, there are the people, there are the 1% that do. Who are just about that life 100%, Yeah. But there's like a 95% would if they could, if they had the right tools.
Shit, man, that's high. That's high percentage.
Honestly, man, like a lot of guys. Like you can think about it. It's as simple as this, bro. Like how most people can relate to how much they love their children. Imagine getting told when you could see your children, or like having 1 hour that you're allowed to spend with them, or you're being monitored, and someone is telling you, and then it's your families that go through that. And I've seen that. I've seen even like some of the hardest guys in prison, like like that would be the thing that really affects them, and they're missing out on those times. You get 5 years, man. You're a kid, like it's a huge section of your kid's life. Yep. You get 10 years. You know what I mean? Like even if you get a year, like that's a lot of progress, and there's a lot to.
And a lot happens in a kid's life in that time as well, man.
Exactly. And like there's situations, and you can't be there for them either. Like and there was a guy actually there was a story actually in Casuarina. There was this guy Kevin Nolan. He was one of the toughest guys in the prison, and he actually cut it like this. So basically, a guy molested his kid while he was locked up.
Fuck.
And then they sent the guy that did this to the protection unit in the prison, and they told the guards, he said, if I see him, I'm going to cut his head off. And the guy Kevin Nolan literally made 2 shanks to the metal shop and cut the guy's head off between units 3 and 4 on the footpath. The guy,
Yeah.
And that's like this. That was before my time in there.
Yeah.
But he ended up getting 12 years and deported to Ireland. But like the thing about it is that like you can't be there to be protective for your kids.
Right.
You can't, and like
yeah. So you want out, man, and you don't want to go back in. But just on that note, man, it's very hard to find a second trade. Well, like when you're used to doing a particular thing like drug dealing. Yeah. A really fast way of
fucking making money, and that's robbing shops or whatever the fuck it is.
It's basically like once you've learned it, it's like the real key to actually to changing your life. One of the real key points is to unlearn. Like you've got to actually look at things from a different perspective.
Start from the bottom.
Exactly. So like all the time I did in prison, like I did just under 6 years. For the first sentence, actually, for my first sentence, it was, like I was looking up to everyone and I was really impressionable, like you're 18, you're coming in and then you start making some guys take you under their wing and, like you see, like they'll show you their photos. Like, oh, I got a Porsche, I got this, like had all the cash, the girls, show the photo of the girls. And when you're a young kid, you're like, yeah, this is awesome. This is what I want to,
Yeah.
And, but then, like they forget about the fact that they're doing now 12 years or 15 years, So like they're not going to actually settle freedom until they're in their late 40s.
Does that sort of gloating go away after time, man? Or are they still banging on about it?
No, well, you find, I think you find with some of them, like people like to live their glory days. I think it's just a natural human thing, like people like to relive their achievements and, and I guess that's the thing about that lifestyle is that there is a lot of fun moments in it. And there is some things that you wouldn't normally do that if you were doing for work money. Yeah. Like, for example, I remember I flew over to Sydney and there was some we met some pretty heavy organised crime figures. Yep. And when we went over, like we went out to like Marquee nightclub and there was a line that was just going right around. And we just paid $5,000 and just went straight up past the VIP, into the VIP section. Yeah. And that's a mad feeling. But you would not do that if you were working. You know what I mean? Like if you're earning your money like an honest way, even if you had that sort of money, like you wouldn't go, I'm going to go spend $5,000 in a night. And that's where the trap falls for a lot of guys.
I know it from a business point of view, man. Yeah. Like a fucking, having first class flights and just having anything you want because money does talk. To lose your your status, to lose your identity, man, is a fucking hard thing.
It is.
And even before my company went, before I went bankruptcy into liquidation, I didn't think that was going to be the hardest part of it. Yeah. I didn't know what I was mentally going to be going, like what I was.
And that's
to prepare for. Yeah,
that's the things that people don't really talk about much. You know what I mean? Like if people hear a story, they don't. You actually have to really you have to break it down to understand things. And I do this a lot in my life with self-analysis. Whenever I've stuffed up, whenever I've had a major failure, I actually, once that time's passed, I actually reflect on it and go, there's no point blaming anyone else. You can't change anyone else's stuff. But you go, where could I have improved? What could I have done differently? Yeah. And then that also, you know what I mean? Like then there's a lesson to be gained. And then if you can find a lesson out of something, then you get the wisdom. Then the experience was worth it.
And letting go of the past, man. Yeah. Like the fucking sooner you let go.
Oh, definitely.
The fucking better, man. Like you just got to let it all go.
Well, it's one of those things like I found like, getting back onto the identity point, when I'd worked myself up, like I was doing debt collecting, drug dealing, I was nommed up with gangs, I was going through all those steps and processes. I earned myself a good reputation. Like I had a good name in prison. Then when I turned it around, one of the most difficult things was actually leaving that identity behind because that was a huge part of it. Like when I walked out.
What were some of the processes involved in doing that, man?
Well, when I first came out, man, the number one thing was faith, not as in like a religious sense, but having faith with things would work out. Like when life's stuffed up and you've had shit thrown at you so many times, that's a very, very hard concept to get your head around. But when I first came out of Cash Arena in 2017, I knew that I wasn't going back, but it was very difficult. I had 6 weeks without work. I had a Marlow ute I couldn't even afford to run, so I had, I had no money. I had rent. I had all this financial stress. And I knew how to make quick money. I could go make some quick money. I could go do some debt collecting or something, and I'd take a half of whatever I could collect. And I knew that I could do that. And there were the thoughts that were going through my head, but then I thought, And for 6 weeks, that was probably one of the most difficult moments because I was completely broke. I've gone from being someone that I'd have money or I'd have a means to, now I've had to let that go. I had to really,
Did you find some strength in being in those places that have no money? I know I have, man. Like,
it's taught me a lot. Like, I'm going for it right now because I've left going being a lithothermic welder on 180 grand a year on the rails, to now I'm a lecturer. So like pay's pretty much halved, you know, and I've had to make extreme spending habit changes, and it's good. Like I'm actually really enjoying life because for me it's about the lifestyle now, and I've got future goals that I need to work on, and it all sort of becomes linked. But that, you know, during that moment of that process, like that really ignited. That was the first real opportunity I had to test what that word faith meant. And after 6 weeks, I got a phone call from one of the places I applied for, and I got my start on rail. So I got pretty much, you know, went up to BHP. Which was, you know, so I went up to BHP, worked in the yard there. I was on like $43 an hour, which at the time was like great. You know what I mean? Like I've never been anything over 30 previous to that. So working 12-hour days, and I was getting, you know, like I had money coming in. It was great. Like my whole world was just going, everything was working out. And like I did that for about for six months. That was my introduction to rail. And even that had a lot of difficulties about it. I had that prison mentality that I had to shed. Like, I'm going into a work environment. So I remember going up there, and the guys, I think my leading hand would have been 21, and I'm 26, and I'm like, you know, so now I'm getting told what to do by someone who's junior to, you know, like that for me was a big ego, like, you know, like that really was a big hit on my ego to now be at the very bottom of something, and that's another thing that people don't realise.
And what would you tell yourself in those situations, man? Like, I mean, you know, your ego's talking in your ear, and when you've been through it, it's easy to look back and go, "Fuck, that was just my ego," and you just want to shut it up. You just go, "Mate, that's just you talking. We're good, doing what we're doing. We're on track. We're, you know."
I think for me, I got into that point with my life that I wasn't gonna no matter what, I wasn't going to go back to prison. So I had to bite my tongue. Like there was times I wanted to just punch people out at work. I'll be honest, you know. Yeah. And that's just because how things were dealt with. Someone like it's different. So it's crazy, but like when you're in a maximum security prison, you're very careful about how you interact with people. Yeah. You know what I mean? You know, like if you want to go, like you're going to say something, you better make sure that you can either back it up or you know what I mean. Like you don't just go around like. But you know, sometimes in a work culture, like people will just be straight up disrespectful to you, and you know, like you're like half your size, and you're thinking I could just snap. You know what I mean? Like that's what's going through your head, and you think, is this person fucking for real? Because you're so used to a different way of living. Yeah. You know, and like that's a challenge. You know, like to be able to do that, to be able to control your temper, and like for me. I'm someone, once I started seeing redline, it was been very, very fucking difficult to be able to pull that back. And then, like, you know, there's been situations where I have, you know, like I've just snapped and like I haven't actually done, you know, but like I've called people out and I've, you know, have a fight or whatever, like in a work environment. And then afterwards, I've had to really like have a good look at that because you start getting that like people, you don't want people to become intimidated of you either, you know. And that was during that original, like that start phase of like turning my life around because it's not like it's the best way to explain it, like when it comes to your mentality, is it's just like your body, you know, like if you don't keep on working on your mind, you know, like that's when you know, like just same as the gym. You don't just go to the gym and go like, you know, oh, that's it, it's done. You know what I mean? Like it's a continuous process, and it's the same with self-development and, you know, and being able to like get a great understanding of things.
Yeah, fuck yeah. And just like, man, I like to hone in when you say particular things like how important has fitness and gym and that been for you, bro?
It's been great. Like honestly, like I'm one of those people that if I'm not at the like gym or being fit, I'm at the pub or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. I've always needed to get endorphins, and it's, you know, like it's like you can choose. There's two ways to deal with stress. It's either, you know, like you can pick up a substance or whatever. Alcohol is a depressant, you know what I mean? So like obviously if you continuously use that, then the only time you'll ever feel better is actually when you have it. Yeah. Or you can go to the gym and you start improving yourself. And like I've been in both stages since I got out of prison. So like there's been times I've just laid on the alcohol and like that's been my crutch. And I can honestly tell you that it's the gym that's the best. Yeah. You know, like getting out, doing the fitness, instilling discipline in yourself, like training on those days and getting yourself into good shape.
In particular, those days that your ego and your brain's telling you not to fucking rock up.
Exactly. You know, and it's more than just a physical thing. For me now, it's more of a mental thing. Yep. Like getting that clarity. It's also, it's the best way to change your body's biochemistry. So, you know, like if you're in a state of depression, so man, they say work out, do it, like get involved in team sports because that's how you overcome. You know, you get a release of endorphins that flood your body, a feel-good chemical. And I've had it. Like I've had, like even lately, I've had some really stressful days at work. Like I'm developing the whole rail program now for TAFE. And like when you get in there, like it's, you know, like I've gone from a job which, like, because, you know, through my rail career over 6 years, I went from being a labourer. I learned how to weld, which was, you know, like it's a very stressful thing to do. but I'm glad I did it. And then then I became a welder. Like obviously once I was a welder, then everything became second nature to me. And I think that's another thing that people have got to understand is that you have to understand that when you start something, it's going to be difficult, but it's not for a very long time.
Yeah.
You know, like going into this role now, I'm now going into a white collar role. So I'm learning a lot of computer skills. I couldn't, I've barely ever touched a computer. I've never been now I've got 3 screens up in front of me while I'm developing a program, for TAFE. It's, but I've had to, but I knew that. So, but I prepared myself mentally.
You've got to see a bit further than that.
Oh, exactly. When I decided to take that job, I understood that I wasn't going to be on the tools anymore, but I knew that there were going to be some challenges there. Yeah. By having thinking about it and actually thinking, what could potentially, and just going all right, this is how I'm going to deal with it, like this, that, and the other. And by planning things out, it prepares you for them so that when they actually come across,
So when was the pivoting point for you then? Because obviously, it sounds fucking amazing since you've come out of prison.
Yeah.
Has there been any relapses, or has there been
I've had relapses with drugs and obviously. Yeah. But I'll say there's been times that I've lapsed on drugs. Mm. I had a process when I have had lapses. I had this thing in my head where I would if I had a lapse, I would I would only use for one night, and that was my thing, and that was and then I would then come down. So I'll literally I'd sort of embrace the come down because that would actually then stop me from going to lapse again sooner. Most people don't they lapse once and they just keep on using because they don't want to come down. And so I sort of punished myself for having the lapse, and it almost became a part of the weighing up process. And that goes to show you the power of addictions because it's not a.
I like that saying, bro. Weighing up, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You when it comes to addiction, it's not. And trust me, I've read so many books on addiction. It's when you really get into it, because you think to yourself, why am I different? 10% of the population have addiction. That's it's a substance addiction. That's a lot of people. Yep. There's millions of people in Australia that are suffering with it. And if you don't really get your head around it, and the thing about it is, and this is where it comes back to ego, is that you act what I found is probably the most beneficial is NA and AA, those sort of groups.
Yeah.
Because you're instead of just relying on your strength every day, which might be good on Tuesday but not so good on Wednesday, you go into a group setting and there's people in there that are going through exactly what you're going through. Yeah. You don't have to be worried about being judged or
Who was that through? Was that
NA was just after. So that's NA, you can do that in there, but
because I've spoke about it before, man. I've done my ego was saying, nah, fuck off, man. You don't need to go to a men's group and all that. But I can, mate. It was one of the best things we've ever done is joining a men's group, man.
Oh, definitely, man. This is the thing, especially with ego, man. Even I've done, there's moments I've done NA and I got really good out of it, and then I sort of thought to myself, well, I don't really need to, because. But now it's more it's like you go into those sort of groups now, it really humbles you because life will humble you. The moment you think that you've got it all figured out is the moment you're about to get humbled. You know what I mean? Basically, it's if you're not, if you're not consciously aware of what can go wrong. And for me, it's been a learning process. I learn from mistakes. That's just how I am. I'll learn every hard lesson. I wish I hadn't, you know what I mean? I wish someone tell me something and I'm that's the way, you know what I mean? But I'm just literally test everything out.
Yeah.
And sometimes those things that that behavior had the same things that used to be really would destroy my life, send me to prison years at the time, high risk behavior, taking those sort of risks and and having that level of fearlessness in what you're doing, you can transfer them into other areas in life. A lot of people, they always go, I wish I could, I wish I did this, I wish I done that, but if you're with me, I've rolled the dice on a business before. Yeah. I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't a risk taker. And like I said, I think anyone that does, you don't know the outcome of something and you're about to put everything you've got into it. And that failed for me. But then there was so many great lessons I learned through that experience. And it's just there's that saying, it's you get knocked down 7 times, you get up 8. You know what I mean? So that knocked me down and that put me into but at the time I didn't know what I was doing. I was just winging it. So I'm calling I was trying to start a health food supplement business. I wanted 20% go to different charities. I was trying to get a lot of, a lot of things that say great. I learned a fair bit through that experience. So I thought, all right, I literally just I got the idea in my head and I was just this is great. This is going to work, Yeah. And but then it also it sort of it humbled me a lot and it also taught me a lot of things as well. It's also to be more instead of just being like a risk taker, be like a calculated risk taker. So make sure that you take your risks.
Well, you learn
at the right time.
Yeah, you sort of learn how to take those calculated risks more as you get older, and I reckon. But to be fearless when you're younger, doing some of these armed robberies and things like that. You know, you were walking through doors that fucking most people wouldn't be able to do. And it's the same thing in business. But, you know, it's all fear-based. And I think that's the point I want to get across here, is that changing your life isn't easy. Or starting a new path. Like you said, like you got to go welding before you want to be a supervisor. You know, like
there's a process to everything, and everything falls under timing. And like there's actually a good point. When I talk about changing life, there's an area I want to touch on, which is a lot of people, like the reason that they're in these sort of positions, it's because of their beliefs about themselves. Like if you were brought up pretty much between the ages of 0 to 7, your brainwaves is in a theta brainwave state. So that is the state where you're like a meditation. So you don't actually have a conscious or a subconscious. Everything is just getting absorbed in. So what happens is, and this what happens in all these areas like Armadale, is that these kids get trauma, they get, like their parents tell them you're useless, you're going to be nothing, you just, or you're a bad kid, you know what I mean? Like you're just you're a naughty kid. Like it's simple things like that. That becomes their identity because they believe what they've been told, because they go, well, why would they lie? They don't realise that adults are very, they can get frustrated and say something out of anger, So when those years, that pretty much is where you become, that sets you. And then after 7, you've then got there's a buffer between both. So you got your subconscious and your conscious. So your conscious is, and this is what people get so stuffed up about. They go, I want to do this, but then I keep doing this. I'll fall back into this. And there's a way to get actually to be able to get into the subconscious. And this was very hard. This also falls under the ego. What I was talking about is it's through meditations, because your brainwave state as an adult is always sitting at, there's a brainwave state called beta, which is higher than what theta is, which is the, and then there's delta below theta, which is like what infants are sitting at, but it's very slowed down. So to get into your subconscious mind, you have to meditate. And what meditation does is people go, oh, it sounds crazy, but like you're lowering your heart rate, you're resting. It's it's always good to do it either in the morning or at the end of the day. But then you can work on those areas, and there's always guided meditations for anything that you can actually work on. So if you don't think that you're worthy, or because that's essentially what addiction and all that stuff is about. It's literally like it's self-harming, but it's like a self-medication. Yeah. So people are harming themselves. It's like, well, why are you harming yourselves? Because you don't love yourself. Yeah. So you need to learn how to actually do that. And if you've got an ego and you're a tough guy and all the rest of it, and I know because I was that guy, to start actually like looking at different possibilities. But I went and explored into those sort of areas and around that sort of stuff, like meditations and all the rest of it. And getting into that, like, actually really helped rewire a lot of my thinking and my thought patterns about myself. And I still use them.
I'm going to hold you there, bro, because fucking, first of all, man, thanks for bringing that up, bro, because that is such a fucking, it's such an important information that people need to start to realise and understand. And like, mate, I only realised about meditation a few years ago myself. Yeah. I always thought meditation as a bit of a hippie way of fucking,
That's the exact same. Like, you just think it was,
But for those that are listening and have that outlook on meditation, dive deep into it, grab it. So, James, why don't you tell us some of these meditation areas where we can find it?
Or, like, for example, if you're, you can literally, any sort of meditation to do, you can find it on YouTube. So basically you can do just start off with a 5-minute meditation. It's very difficult, and it's natural for you to actually have your mind wander. Yeah. But, build yourself up in a higher lifting meditations.
So there's Joe Dispenza as well.
Dr. Joe Dispenza. Yeah, I've read all his books.
It takes a little bit to get to that level of understanding exactly what he's on about. But exactly. But when you're there, it's fucking amazing, man.
And that's why I've gained a lot of that information. And one thing I've gained from, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, it's the neuroscience behind the whole process. Is that, it's all about raising vibrations. So when you're depressed, you're at a low vibration. You're very, very low. When you're angry, they're all anything that basically feels negative is a low vibration. To raise your vibrations, you need to get into a state of positivity. And one of the easiest ways to do that is through gratitude, be things that you're grateful for. And that can be difficult, but then it's also an opportunity to train your brain and start looking for things to be grateful for. Yep. You can just be grateful for the fact that you're breathing. You know what I mean?
Even just realizing and understanding that you're at that low level of vibration.
Of course.
So if you're in a low you know, in a negative mood or an angry mood, just be aware of yourself, what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that is then the second stage of that is once you've aware, then you can do something about it.
Right,
Then you can say, fuck, you know, James said, you know, start showing some gratitude. So get a book and write down all the fucking
things
awesome
you're grateful about. And, you know, and
like the warm shower that we turn on every fucking morning, man, is a great way to start. Like, because a lot of us, or even running fucking water, man, we can go and get a cup of fucking water and drink it. Here in most parts of Australia.
Exactly.
You know?
And exactly. And they're all things you'd be grateful for. Because, you know, like, I've got a bit of a side story. My cousin, he was, you know, like he was shot dead by the police over in America. So he'd done time over there. He'd spent a lot of time in San Quentin, which is a pretty famous prison in California. Hard prison, hard jail. I used to write to him when I was in prison. He's a bit older than me. Me and him were sort of both the black sheeps of our family. And, you know, he got shot dead by the police in California about 2 years ago. And the reason was because he did not want to go back, because over there, the things that guys get 3 or 4 years for year, they'll give you 30, 40 years for there. And he just said, like, he always said to my auntie, if I'm going back to prison, I'd rather die. And he pulled a gun out in the cops when he would have been looking at probably a potential life sentence for the drugs and guns and, you know, but he put himself into that hole, and he's got 2 kids that he's left behind, you know, because he just thought, I'm not going back to that. And that's hell over there. But like, so even if you are in a shit position in Australia, be grateful that it's in Australia, you know, like you don't want to be in Syria, or you don't want to be in Ukraine right now. You know what I mean? Like it's,
and going back to the kids and how the way, you know, no, because like a lot of the time, you know, we're telling them how useless they are, or, you know, fuck, you're a pain in the ass. Or they're overhearing conversations on how hard it is to be a parent, you know, oh, we've got no money. If I didn't have children, fuck, I'd have a lot more money. All these little negative things are going into their head. And then therefore we're you know, then we're saying to them, you know, why aren't you better or anything like this? But we've bred all that fucking shit information into them. But like, just going back to you know, showing gratitude, like, fucking just think about how amazing it is to be a fucking parent. I know what it is for me, man. Like in my hardest times, without my children, I probably wouldn't be here. I could honestly say that, you know, but like just showing that gratitude, just touching their hand, you know, like in my darkest moments, I started just dropping my kids off to school and picking them up, where I never done it. When I had business, mate, I'd never fucking done it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I wouldn't swap it for a fucking $1 million. No. The opportunity to take my boy to school and bring him home. And just little things like I used to just hold his hand. He never knew it, but I'd just hold his hand in and out of school, and I'd just be feeling it up to the heavens, and just going, how fucking lucky am I just be holding this young boy's hand, and then having the opportunity to be his dad and now teach him fucking great things of this life, you know, because it's up to me to teach him
exactly
to be the good people, the man, you know, to be the man in society that we want him to be.
And man, like even like myself, when I eventually have kids, like I haven't been blessed yet. I have a dog, you know, but the way that I view that, if you have children, like you've got to actively be aware. Like, so if you have a son, you want to try and raise him into the man you want to be with. And if you have a daughter, you want to make sure that you treat a mum in the way that you would want, because she's the type of man that she's going to actually sort of be with. People think that's crazy, but there's actually a lot of studies done behind that. So like if you're the sort of, you know, like if you don't conduct yourself, if you're not proud of the way that you conduct yourself to people especially in your immediate family, you've then got to be aware that you're going to see, you know, you're going to see the results of that in a later point, you know, and that's usually just how it works. And that's what a lot of intergenerational trauma comes from. Is people get brought up a certain way and what they find normal. I have a friend, and she, you know, she's a great, like really great girl, lovely heart, all the rest of it. But she, you know, like she grew up a certain way, like, and she essentially, like, her dad was just really like just a real abusive father, you know, and that manifested itself in the relationships he's had. Like, and I've seen some of these guys, you know what I mean, like they're just real, like, horrible people, like to the core, you know what I mean? Like they're not like, there's, you know, like when I do, you know, like I do talk about, there are some people out there that just have that within them, you know,
and it is sad, man, and it all comes down to self-awareness, isn't it? You know, and we talk about like this stuff being passed down to generation, and I call it luck, man. A lot of people say, you know, there's no such thing as luck, but one thing I am lucky for, and that's that I've being self-aware of, like, I've wanted better for my life, man. I didn't want to pass all this generation shit down and down and down again, you know, to my children. And in some ways I have unconsciously, you know, like fucking like, and there's been lessons. And sometimes when I've noticed that,
because you don't know you're doing it until, I've got this saying, you don't know until you know.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're doing shit you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's not until you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
until you know.
You don't know. Yeah, you don't know what you know.
Yeah, and you do look back and you just, and you can be, you can hold, like you can sit there and feel shit about yourself and drag yourself down for the past and the things that you've done. Or in that moment, like you said before, you can analyze all that and strengthen yourself from it.
And like that analyzing stage is such an important thing. Yeah, and the thing, like this is another really crucial point of when it comes to turning your life around, you have to like understand that you got to really weigh up how people like make you like. You've got to make new friends and make your identity. It becomes part of your identity, right?
And it does come.
And exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of that sort of stuff that I found was very difficult is because the guys who were like, I've probably got a couple of friends who are still involved in the old criminal like sort of world, but like the only reason that I still am like is they're completely respective of what I am doing now, and they're not going to drag me backwards, But that's what you've got to really come to learn is that like a lot of the people that you think like they literally don't, and it's almost like if you try and tell someone that you're giving up drugs and they're on drugs, that you can guarantee that's the quickest way to get some drugs off them, You come up and ask them for drugs, they won't.
And talking about fear, you've got to recognize those things and don't be scared of being alone. Go to that alone place.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to fucking
and try things that you wouldn't think you would try. Like I've done Toastmasters before.
Yep.
So like Toastmasters, for people that don't know, that's like a public speaking group. So that's like that's a really good opportunity to meet people that are completely outside your realms,
Yep.
So like
boxing gyms,
you know what I mean? Like boxing gyms are great because you learn discipline, you learn focus, and it also gives you an opportunity to have courage, like like you want to like this problem like guys think they're tough when they jump. Five guys jump a dude. That's not being tough. That's weak as piss. You know what I mean? But when you go in there, if you want to get if you actually have that in you, want to fight, like go fight someone who's your weight, your size, and who actually wants to fight. Yeah. And that's why I love about boxing. Boxing is like it's all about. If like for me, I'll go in if I'm sparring someone who's good, man. Like that's a fear. Like I've got like there's anxiety around that. Like I've had that when I was even training the box before and I have a fight. COVID sort of nipped it on the bud, but started to go back up to work. But at that period of time, I remember I trained 6 days in a row. And I went up and I sparred one of the heavyweights at the gym, and I got my nose splattered, like just busted. You know what I mean? And it was hard. Like obviously everyone's just in the gym there, and you're like shit. So I just like, no, I'm going to go a couple more rounds with him. And then afterwards, like I went, and then the next day I'm thinking, well, I was going to have a day off, but if I don't come in now, he's going to think he's got it over me. Like it becomes like a mental thing with yourself. And I remember driving to the boxing gym that next session, and like I just like the last thing in the world I wanted to do was go out there and spar that guy. Like it was and then like by facing that fear and just driving the whole way there, pulling up, first thing I did say, you want to spar after class today? He didn't want to spar, but like for me that was a major. It's like it was a mental win. It's like it was building myself up, And that like I'm just using boxing as an example, but that could be anything, And for many people, it's actually just seeking help. Like if you're in a really bad space, like I can honestly say that what got me into NA was like I didn't enjoy being around my dog when I was on drugs, and it's like I could see that my dog was actually and I actually Googled it, how do you know if you have a drug problem, because at the time, this is the thing, is it the craziness of addiction is it's always going to be within your brain, but when you've been at a point in your life where you've been severely in the grip of it. And then you go into a point where you actually you transition from that. It's almost like the disease manifests itself into another form, which is you thinking you've got control over it. And and I literally had to Google, how do you know if you have a problem with drugs? And one of the things that came up was that you don't enjoy the company of your pets. You don't enjoy patting your pets. You don't like being around them. And that was true. I was like, I couldn't, you know what I mean? Like my dog just annoyed the shit out of me. It's like, get away from me. Yeah. And that was the moment. That was another moment then. I was like, I need to go seek some help, because I'm...
So those who are going to be listening to you, James, because like even BFT, like going down to that gym, like I mean, being at home, being fully addicted to drugs, like your fucking life's feeling pretty shit. It's shit. You're tempted to just go and have another fucking session on drugs, alcohol, whatever the fuck it is. and the last thing you're feeling like is walking into a fucking men's group, or the last thing you feel like is going to the BFT or a boxing gym, or fuck it, or,
if you're in severe grips of addiction, the only way you get the first thing, like a lot of the points I've been bringing up are there when your mind's when you're clear. First step is to just get yourself treated. Like if that means getting into rehab, going into detox, you need to get the drugs out of your system, and then you're at your base point. Fortunately for a lot of guys, that's usually when they go to prison, But like I've had friends, like when I've helped and in basically trying to turn themselves around, getting them starts on rail, and that I watched the whole process. Like I've had them come to my house, get off the drugs, which is a slow process. It took one of my real close friends, and one of my best mates really, and he he was really caught in the thick of crime, drugs, everything. Came in, got him off, and then got him he got clean, which was great for me. It was like some of the best things in the world. He got him a start on rail, got him. He was working way up north, and when he started falling off, that actually it actually impacted my own recovery. There was times when I'd use with it because he started moving again. He basically over the Christmas break, this was a few years ago, they pretty much just said there's no work for a long period of time. He got involved back in it and started doing what he normally did, which was move some stuff, move some product, and he was at my house, and it got to a point where I ended up having to kick him out, which was hard. I got my house was raided by organised crime, and that was really difficult because I feel like when you do that, then you're the bad guy. When you put yourself before, and I didn't want to. I've still got mad love for him. We've got distance now because he's still in the grip of addiction, but it's one of those things, and that floored me. All the greatness I felt from him improving, I had the reverse of it. Going back into that other state. Which I learned obviously about boundaries, because you need to learn how to put boundaries up and stuff, And you also need to be respectful.
Which is hard, man.
It is. It is hard.
Yeah.
Man, it's someone if people that you really care a lot, but if they're impacting you, you're no good to anyone if you go down, if you start falling, and you see this happen a lot. And the worst thing that you see, the most common thing in recovery is that someone gets help, their partner doesn't, and they think they can somehow manage to be, you know what I mean? And just when you hear people talk about that.
So what would you say then to a mother, man? She's got 2 young children, or just young children.
Yeah.
She wants off it.
Yeah.
But she's with a guy who's seriously on it, not looking like he's going to come off it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's fucking. We can sit here and probably name 100 different scenarios.
But that's a common scenario.
Fucking hard.
Yeah, that's a really common scenario.
Yeah. So for those females out there, man, what?
Well, this is the real hard thing, because especially if they're in love and whatnot, or usually a lot of times when it's an addiction, it's a toxic form of it. But if that's that sort of situation, you do need to just put all your focus on your kids more than yourself, what your needs and wants are. It then becomes about your children, and you've got to really make that your focal point.
Yeah. And
when there is going to be a point, especially if you get yourself, your children removed from that situation, and then you start going into recovery, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be extremely difficult. You're going to it's going to knock you for 6, and you're going to be second guessing it and thinking, but. Unless you want to go back to that pattern and that you're happy for your children to get brought up around that, you've got to put them as your priority, get them out, put them into, whatever it can be, whether it's a women's shelter and with children, with care, get out of that situation.
Even going up to some fucking stranger or some strange family and just get out there and I guess get that, put your hand up, man. Because a lot of people don't know how to approach it. For those from the outside that want to help, they also don't know how to approach you that's got the addiction. They don't want to come up all fucking rude and be...
Well, you've got to be very... for someone from the outside, you've got to be very careful about the level of help you give to people that have addiction. And I say this because I know, I burnt many bridges before I finally walked across one. You know what I mean? I had multiple opportunities, and where I could have, and people have, it's difficult because I never had any intention. It just makes you feel worse, which then, it gets into the full form of addiction. This is the thing about addiction is like a guy, Jonah Harari, I think I was talking a bit about his book before, Lost Connections, which was around depression. He does an excellent TED talk around addiction.
What's his name again?
Jonah Harari.
Yep.
Harari, yeah.
And
so
lost connections.
Yeah. So if you look up his TED talk, you probably have to put it up on the yeah. But if you find his TED talk, he talks about addiction. He literally talks about the studies done around it. They do a study with rats, and it's quite interesting because what they do is they put water in a rat's cage. One water's just got normal water. The other water has water that's laced with cocaine. And what they find is that the rats will just drink the cocaine-laced water. So then someone actually at the university goes, well, what happens if we make a cage rat paradise? And we put the same bottles in there. And what they found was that the rats didn't drink the water with the cocaine in it because their life had been so much improved. It's like, yeah, of course you want to use
because they're more active and got more shit to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's natural. Like if your life is so shit, like if you're in a really bad spot, it makes sense that you do drugs. It's escapism. Like you're literally escaping from your reality, and that's what it is. To get away, to be able to get ahead of that is to be actually is to take the steps to make your reality a point where you don't need to escape it. You know what I mean? And that's like I'm at that point now. Like my life is good now. But like when I was at the dumps, and that's when you're at those hard moments, you're not at that point yet. You're not actually, you know what I mean? Like so, like everything around you is, and there's a million reasons why you should, you can do that. And it literally just becomes about, and that's when I talked about faith, which I brought up earlier, was like you've got to have faith that if you do the right thing, the right thing will happen for you. Like I know it for myself. Like even my last prison sentence, man, some dude smashed down the door to my house. I broke, like, you know what I mean? Like it was 4 o'clock in the morning, man. Like I had every rounds for self-defense. I cracked the dude first, because he's putting holes through my door at 4 in the morning, detached his jaw from his skull, and he was a big dude as well. And but when it all came about, like a week later, the cops were there banging on my door. I thought it was him with his mate. So I answered the door with a machete, at that particular time. This is my last sentence, the one that I turned it around on. But in my head, like it was just like, but the way that they looked at it was like he was provoking you. It wasn't grounds for self-defense. And then with my criminal record, it was I got up, I got done. I got charged for it. But then and then I had to do 2 years in prison for that sentence. And I had to then but for me, it was just like, there was points during my sentence at the start where I just wanted revenge. Like I was like, I want to get this guy, I want to fuck him right up. But at the it got to a certain point where I had to look back and go, you know what, this is just karma for the other shit I've done. I've gotten away. I promise you, I got away with a lot more than I got done for. And that's how I viewed it, and that was how I dealt with that.
We talk a lot about on here, like it's happening for you, not to you as well.
All those lessons, at those lowest moments, I look at now, like for example, I look at those years in prison. I looked at the times when my parole was denied. I looked at all those hardships that I went through. Had I not gone through that, I wouldn't have had the strength of character I do now. Like the things, like learning how to do all this sort of stuff. I learned all these skills, and it wasn't like some being divine thing. It was literally like every time I'd need to learn it. So I'd feed my mind, And it's like if you want the secret to a happy life, it's progress. It's like Tony Robbins, he says it a lot, but it's true. If you're looking for, like people think, happiness is this and that, you go sit on a deserted beach. If you spent your whole life to sit on a deserted palm tree beach, you would not be happy. I promise you. Yeah. It's just it's an ideal, but like realistically, it's just improvement in yourself. There's plenty of great guys. Like you want to learn about self-improvement. There's just YouTube videos by Jordan Peterson. He talks about it, Tony Robbins, like all these guys, like they're pretty much just basically about like just getting you, like whatever it is. The other
if you can't read, I've said a few times on it, all these Audible,
Audible.
I fucking listen to that into the car.
Myself,
turn off the TV, get off fucking Instagram and just put some headphones in and walk around the house, clean the house, cook a dinner with fucking Audible in your ear. It'll do miracles. And even if you can't afford that, where I started was just YouTube, man.
Yeah, YouTube, man. And this is like another thing that's really a good point to bring up is that people don't ever compare you to, like talking about Jordan Peterson, don't ever compare yourself to someone else. So like at my lowest moments, like things that should have been like celebrate. Like if you've never had a job before and you get a job as a cleaner, man, you should be celebrating that the same as if someone who's a hiker is just climbing Mount Everest. You know what I mean? Yep. Like people don't because they think, like it's this or if you just bought your first car and it's a bomb, but you've saved up and you use your own money, you should be so proud of yourself. Don't go looking at social media like where you look at someone else who just got themselves, got a Mercedes, but now they're 90 grand in debt and they've got payments that are so high that they eat noodles every day because they don't share that stuff on social media. It's something about like when it comes to your own growth journey. look at where you are, and then no matter what it is, it's the smallest little increment of improvement. It's like a ripple, like it just, whatever it is, like if it just, for most people, just don't do one day without drugs. That's it. Do that one day.
Just the micro changes.
Exactly. Micro changes. Yeah. And that's how you break like goals.
Because a lot of us have expectations that like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to be 20 kilos lighter, or I'm going to be drug free, or I'm going to be the world's best fucking father. No. Tomorrow, you just like the way you got to wake up tomorrow is just that you're a little bit better than what you were yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
You're still going to stumble. You're still going to fall. You're still going to fuck up. As long as you're just continuously making those micro changes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having the expectations of what you want to be and where you're going, but you can't be focused on that too much. It really is.
You can't beat yourself up. Like there's always like things, you'll learn things along the way. For example, and if you have a shit day, like, and it's a horrible day, at the end of the day, like the best thing about the human body is that it resets in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, you get in bed and it's like, and the best thing, like I found this at work. I've worked on rail, man. Like I've out sledgehammers out in the Pilbara. Like you have some days that are just brutal. You know what I mean? It's like torture. Like you would have. 100 years ago, they would have had to have a ball and chain on you to do it. Now they just pay you well. You know what I mean? Like, but exactly. Yeah, just pay you which was my methodology. I work like I say, paying like a king. But those days like that. But like the best thing about those days, the most shittest days that you can have, is that the next days is either going to be better. Like usually it's going to be better. You know what I mean? Like so you've got that to look forward to. If you're having the worst day that you could ever possibly imagine. The benefit is when you go to sleep that night, the next day, even if it is bad, it's still better than you know what I mean. And I had that like we've had that before when it's like 45 degrees. Like you're dead at the end of the day. The next day, it's not as bad as the day before, and like you just got to hang on to those little things. It's not about.
And if you are struggling, chuck on YouTube and read something inspirational, or listen to one of these podcasts. And
podcasts like that. You'll gain. Like. The things that I'm talking about now, this has taken me like to this moment is coming up this year would be it's like 6 years of self development to get to here, and that's like it's not something that you're gonna just like if you just listen to one podcast, I don't think your life is going to magically change. It's a process, and you've got to maintain it.
That's where all this has come from, James. Like it's taken me years of self development to get to here. Now I just want to share light and spread it on a faster rate, because it is hard to stumble across some of these learnings and books and fucking YouTube. And
this is the thing about the books as well, is like, especially the things I've learned about development, like the psychology, like how to be optimistic, like that's another good point, like learning how to not be pessimistic and optimistic, the huge difference between it and how it will improve your life. A lot of these books are written by people that haven't actually gone through those same experiences. And this is what I found was difficult, is I didn't really have anyone when I was trying to go learn and figure stuff out. I'd hear or see something, or I'd think, that would be okay. It was just the curiosity thing that sort of led me down that path. And that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to do the podcast today, is because like there's no how-to guide. You know what I mean? Like there's most people, they think that when you've got to become, like, no offense to people that are religious, like a religious nut, to be able to actually, get to be able to stop living that life and doing it. It's like, no, you don't have to be and sorry for using that terminology, but there's no offense to those sort of people, but it's real, like, exactly. Like if that's, by all means, if that's what it takes you to sort your life out, then that's the best. But for the other people, and this is what I found was very difficult getting into the whole recovery scene, was that I thought, as soon as I heard anything about spirituality or anything like that, I thought, no, bang, eliminated it straight away. For now, because of the things that I've learned over time, like I believe in, like I've one of the best books I ever read was called Law of Attraction, by Esther and Jerry Hicks, and The Vortex, which is another one in their series, which just talk about the laws of the universe and like why things happen. And it was one of those books that I read, and just like it made my whole life make sense.
And for those that don't understand it, that's why you're gonna stick your nose up at it.
Yeah,
because it does. And again, it's fear. It's walking through a door.
Yeah.
Mate, I challenge everyone out there to go and read some of these books and have a look at and try to understand how the universe works and how we're all connected. Another big thing I've done, man, I don't know if you've heard of it, is ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca, yeah. I've done a lot of DMT, but I've heard about the ayahuasca.
Similar sort of stuff. Yeah. And again, that's sort of looked at like, is I mean, look, and I don't want to go and promote it or anything. Oh, like man, but you got to.
The thing about ayahuasca, man, is that like the reality of it is they've done studies, man. Like they've taken people like rape victims and stuff, or had extreme trauma, people that have been destroyed, and like things that like their lives are just, they've taken him in and they've gone through that spiritual journey process of the ayahuasca. And it's usually in South America. I know that they do places in Australia, but it's very, but if you want to go the full shaman journey, then it's.
It was full shaman journey.
Yeah, man, like that's, but like people go out there and they literally, like they recover, and for some people, like if you've tried every single avenue, if there's things that just really, like you've got to look at other options.
And the other thing is, if you're at that point of life and fucking do it, what's the worst it can do? There's a saying that they say about it. It's like doing 10 years of therapy in one night with ayahuasca, and I've done it twice, and I can 100% say that's what it is, man.
Yeah. Like, I've had DMT experiences, so I understand. I never had ayahuasca. I've done the research on it, but like I've had experiences on DMT that you couldn't explain to anyone, and if you did, you'd sound crazy. You know what I mean? Like, so you just know, like if it's unless someone else has actually done it, then you might talk about your experience, but it's not something that you would just go,
I guess the point we're trying to make here is like fucking go through some doors. Yeah. Fucking broaden your perspective on life. You know what I mean? Like, don't be stuck. Don't victimize yourself.
No.
Stand the fuck up. And if, like, I mean, now if you're listening to this, you can even email me on fucking real or get hold of James or, send us some emails, some questions. Yeah. We'd be more than happy to help.
Definitely.
I guess just sort of just like maybe wrapping it up a little bit, but like tell us about where you're at now, man, and we're talking about visions before.
Yeah. All right. So
what are your visions, man? Where are you heading?
I'll explain a bit. So with what I'm doing, and this is what I learned from the failure of my other business, is that I have my future vision is to eventually be able to get. I want to get, because I know how much rail, which is my background now since I got out of prison, how much it helped in saving my life. Yeah. That brotherhood I had in prison, that got transferred into the brothers I had on rail, and like that was such an important thing because I think you need to be able to grow and bond, and even when I've had my ups and downs, like having that to fall back on, and some of the friendships and stuff I made there have just been like, they're lifelong, but what I want to do is that I want to eventually get a program sort of set up. So essentially, I want to write, like I actually want to get back into the prisons. I want to like help guys develop and like explain my story and processes because I know that I've got the credibility because I've been there, I've done it. You know what I mean?
100%, man. I can.
And and now I want to get them to the right headspace, and then obviously then give them an opportunity by getting them onto the rail. So I want to start my own rail business one day. Get that so that I can then potentially, get guys up into mining, get them out earning 6-figure incomes. You know what I mean? Like. I'm not talking so like they can support their family, be that structure.
They don't have to go back to old ways.
Yeah, exactly. Don't have to go back to old ways. You know what I mean? Like you can do whatever. You can buy a house, build a life, all that sort of stuff. And I want to be able to do that. And that's the ethos behind the business, is because it has a really strong why behind it. Now, I'll tell you something. What I learned from my previous business failure was that I tried to do things that had the greatest and best intentions of them, but I tried riding a wave. So I read a book by Robert Greene. He's got some excellent work, his book Mastery. He talks about the apprenticeship stage. So when you're really trying to build something that's really big, like you got to understand where you need to upgrade your skills. For me, going into going into the role of being a TAFE lecturer, it fell onto my lap. Crazy, like talking about how things just happen. But I actually done my business plan, and I was like, shit, I'm working like nearly 80 something hours a week. How am I going to get this to, you know what I mean? Like, how am I going to be able to get this off the ground? And then I thought I need to get skills in other areas. I'm not computer savvy. Like I haven't written a program before. And then I got a phone call, and it was basically like I got recommended by an old safety representative I had up at Rio Tinto to come and get on board with TAFE's flagship program. At the moment, I'm the only person at TAFE who's writing the rail program.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like, the things that I needed to get skills, I'm getting coached on how to do that, but these are all skill sets.
And although it might feel like that society or your expectations of what is successful, even though you're on 80,000 a year or whatever it may be, and you might have taken a step backwards in your pay packet and all that, sometimes it is, and it's like you're working for something bigger. So, and it's about getting out of bed every morning, because it's hard to get out of bed going, I'm only on 80,000. Well, I've got to fucking deal with kids or fucking or computers, man, fuck computers, or whatever. All these old things that are burdens on you, or your ego's talking. You got to really see fuck it, man. This is what I'm getting up to bed, out of bed for.
It's crazy, man. Like, but I think it comes with maturity as you get a bit older. it's usually like my whole mindset before was instant gratification. So for me, it'd be like, no way would I be giving up 180 grand a year job to go get 100. You know, there's no way. But then like now it's just like, well, I'm gaining skill sets. Like I'm learning how to be under pressure in an office environment. I'm learning how to work in an office environment. I'm learning how to network. I've got people who are mentoring me through like how to develop programs. You know, like it's not simple. Like if you've ever done any studying, I'm writing the books as well as the test and like 16 different units. Work, so I'm doing all that stuff and like I'm using my rail knowledge and I'm trying to make it relevant and you know like, but it's getting that complex level of thinking going. You know, like so separate to what I was doing when I was on the tools. So by doing this is like a stepping stone to what I want to do down the track. Sure. Because now I'm learning complex ways of thinking, complex behaviors. I'm learning how to develop programs, and I'm also, problem solving. I'm doing a lot more of that than like before. There was a set when you like even as a welder, like I knew once you learn how to weld and you're not challenging yourself, and then like these all factored into it. And then obviously I've got other passions like with my boxing. I wanted to do fighting, so that's a part of the reason, and just the lifestyle, So it's just. But like for me, this is like a stepping. Do this. I don't. One thing I'll say about the universe: don't put anything on time limits. It's just when the right opportunity comes along and the right things fall into place. I have got a 42-page business plan set, ready to go. Yep. For when the moment's right, if the right person, by any chance there's any billionaires or millionaires listening to this, definitely get in touch.
It will happen, bro. It will happen. And how funny is it that when you are on that path, things do just fall on your lap.
Yeah,
I was feeling I was feeling stuck just a couple of weeks ago, and like I've started a new job and all that, and I'm thinking, fuck, I've come out of business, and this is the first time I'm actually working for another person. Within 20 years. Yeah, so I'm learning a whole new skill set as well, and you do your ego brain's coming in and saying all this fucking bullshit, and you could be doing this, or you could be making this, or you're capable of running your own fucking business, or but until you start going, no, these are the reasons why I'm here, and I'm learning a whole. I'm also learning how to be humble again, or learning to start what it's like to start at the bottom. I've done this meditation. Yeah. And just at the end of the meditation, you get clarity about things. I just had this saying of like, just keep repeating to yourself over the next few days that you're open to miracles. Yeah. And, bro, this was actually fucking the day before I come across you as well, man. You know what I mean? And,
it's great. Yeah, crazy. Like you think about, you want to like look at how crazy the universe is. Yeah. Who would have thought that just off a quick conversation at the end of a gym session? Exactly, you know what I mean? Like, just,
but at that time, bro, I'm sitting there going, I'm repeating myself. Like you're not stuck. Just be. I'm open to miracles. I'm open to miracles. And no shit, man. I could sit here and bang on all day. But I had like probably 20 different things that happened to me, and they were all little things, but they were things that I allowed myself to be opened up to actually respect it and see it. A lot of the times we see miracles happen right in front of our eyes, and we're just
oblivious to it. Yeah. But it's like there's a really good speech by Jim Carrey, and he talks about that. He goes, if one door shuts, another one opens, and he's really powerful in the laws of the universe and attraction. He's got a famous story, and I suggest anyone who's listening, if you like Jim Carrey stuff, listen to his story. Before he even got his first gig, before he became big, he wrote a check for himself for $10 million, and he wrote the date, and he said he was going to get it in 5 years, and sure enough, he claimed that $10 million check.
Was that for Dumb and Dumber or
no? Maybe one of those movies he did. I can't remember which one it was. Yeah. But so he wrote that check years before it happened. He used to go up into the boulevard in Hollywood, into Beverly Hills, and he would embrace, he would feel like that's his neighborhood. I do the similar thing now. There's a place I like in East Perth, and there's a house I've even thought that's going to be my house one day. But it's just something I do.
The law of attraction is one, you got to visualize it, you got to understand it, but two, you got to live it as if like you're living.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't expect you don't wait for things to come to feel. When I'm walking around like that, like in East Perth or the area that I really like for me, that's I get into a state where I feel like this is my neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like they probably I see the same people there all the time. It's my routine on the weekends, but it's also like a reminder about where I want to go and what I want to do. And that can be if it's like with happiness, all those sort of things. It's anything that you want, you've got to start to feel it and believe.
So when you're in those neighborhoods where all you see is crime and shit like that, man, you've really got to visualize some of these neighborhoods that we've talked about. I'm not going to stereotype any particular of them because they actually happen in a lot of neighborhoods.
And even rich people are fucking suffering at the moment as well, mate, in nice neighborhoods. But the idea is that you need to visualize what area you want to be and the people you want to be, then go and live that. I mean, get your mindset out of what you're...
Wherever your life is at the moment, always ask yourself, because people, it's just a natural, like especially for men, women as well, like it's a hierarchy thing, you know what I mean? People go, oh, why do these women, it's all about the money that they go with these like billionaires that look like, you know, no offense, but like James Packer or something, you know, like why they got beautiful? It's just because it's a hierarchy. And when you're in the criminal world, when you're in the drug world, everyone's always trying to climb a hierarchy, and I realise that. I say when you're climbing it, but like you got to mean what's the goal at the end of it? You climb the criminal hierarchy, you end up dead, or you're gonna end up doing like a life sentence. That's the top. That's what you've got to look. That's what you're aiming for. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if you want to, you know, like if you get into anything, whatever your workplace might be, like just improve. You know, just keep on climbing up in that particular spot, and that's the same even with drug addiction. Like you know, if you can clear the drug addiction, even just like you know, like just get yourself healthy, fit. And like just go through that process because, you know, like the one thing, there's the pain of like suffering or the pain of regret, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, sorry, not the pain of suffering, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, you know?
But even when you're starting to come out of your addiction, you then, because you're not under the influence, you are going to get hit hard with the shit that you've done in the past.
Yeah.
So that's a whole new fucking hill to climb.
Yeah, exactly. It? And you know, for me, like my point, when I went to do mentoring, I didn't know what I was doing. Like it was quite a nerve-wracking experience for me. But one thing I realised is that when I first got into mining, I started working away and I started doing that. I had to keep my story hidden. I used to tell people I was a personal trainer because I used to work in the gym at Casuarina. And I wouldn't tell them that because everything could be used up against you in there. And like it's almost like I had to be ashamed of my own story. But when I started giving back and I started doing the mentoring, I didn't feel bad about talking about my story because it's like, this is what I've done, but these are the steps I've taken.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then that gives me like, I'm not afraid of my own story. I'm not trying to hide about it. It can't be used against me. You know what I mean? Because I'm owning it. You know, like when I'm trying to hide it and stuff, you know, like, and that's what I worry about because like you go into some workplaces, man, like it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. You know, like people, if they find out something bad about you, they will. And it happens. You got to understand that people might use your past against you. As I was saying to you earlier, like going for this role at TAFE, like I literally had the education department screening unit decline my ability to be able to work at TAFE, even though I volunteer mentor in high schools. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. They're like, you know, like you think of the logic behind it. I can go on a school camp tomorrow. I can go. I'm cleared under my working with children's check to be able to be unsupervised with children. A government department's done the screen, and they, you know, and then 3 years after the fact, like just recently, like a couple of months ago, I've had the roadblock of having the working with having this Department of Education screening unit tell me that I'm not of the right character to be able to teach rail at TAFE. You know what I mean? But they're like, even that.
You can do two things at that time of hearing that.
Well, because I could have just thrown it all up in the air and just gone like, I could have been. And there's been times in my life when I'd get a bit of bad news that would be an excuse. I wrote it out. Like, I'll be honest with you how it actually panned out. For 4 days, I was waiting on this decision because it went now. They recommended to the head of TAFE to fire me, and it fell onto this particular lady, Michelle Hode. She's the head of TAFE. She could have looked at my story and fired me and agreed with the screening unit and with their recommendation and got rid of me, or she could have given me a chance and I didn't know how that was going to go. Like I've got character references. I've done work with Angel Hands before. I've done obviously the principal from Cecil Andrews Senior High School, Stella Ginman. She's a lovely woman. She done us a character reference. Like these are really great character references, and there were people that knew about my past, and you know, so I've presented them all, you know, to the director of TAFE, to the actual, you know, not to her directly, but to the head of the HR. And I was sitting on this massive level of anxiety because I'm enjoying life. Like I'm loving this lifestyle. I'm loving the role that I'm in, being able to develop and create something from scratch and being a part of that and saying, like, I know that no matter what, I can always, 5 years down the track, I started the role program at TAFE 10 years. You know what I mean? Like that's something that's mine. Yeah. You know, like it doesn't hold the same effect. It's like I welded that track back in, you know what I mean? Like, so for me, it's something, you know, like I've now gone to a government institute and I'm actually implementing something. But that all fell down to that, and that left the anxiety. Then I did a meditation, similar to what you were just talking about with what you were saying earlier. I did a meditation the night before, and it was a bit different. This one, it was a positive affirmations one. So you just repetitively repeat, like I am worthy, I am, and those positive affirmations. And then the next day, I woke up and I had all that anxiety that I'd been carrying around for nearly a week was just dissipated.
Cool.
And I felt really good, man. Like the whole day, I just went to work. I was just like, what? I came to the realization: whatever happens, it's meant to be. If I'm not meant to be working here, then it's not part of the plan. Like, don't fight it. Just, you know what I mean? Like, you'll make it work. It's the fear of the unknown that keeps people like,
Yep.
And sure enough, that afternoon I got a phone call and they said, look, we looked at your case. We're quite satisfied that with the amount of time that you've done since you've been in prison, that, that you've actually, and the amount of steps you've done with helping other people, like that your character shows that you're not that same person anymore. And that's something like, that's if you are in that really bad spot and you think, well, I'm never going to be anything else in life. My criminal, I've got 30 charges, armed robberies, selling supply, GBH. Like, it doesn't get much more. Yep. You know what I mean?
Yep. And even if you had let's just say they didn't deny you, you still got to look back and go, well, you're going to get denied in life, man.
Yeah.
But because if you're not fucking trying hard.
No, exactly.
You know what I mean?
People, that's what I mean. Like, if you're not failing, you're not trying.
Obviously, the successes, you're going to succeed as well when you push forward. But you mate, if you just continue, if you're pushing to the very limit, you got to have some failure.
Well, man, the one principle. You ask any boxing trainer, what's the most beneficial? Like, they always will tell you, you'll learn more from a loss. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same. Like, boxing will teach you more about, because when you're winning, you're not thinking about wanting to do that. I won the fight. You know what I mean?
It's a scary place when you're in a winning streak, man. Because
exactly. Because when you win, like, it's like you learn how to handle the defeat, and it's not about it's about how you bounce back from a defeat. Like, try and minimize the amount of time that it knocks you out. Like, I've had failures, man, that have taken me out for 6 months. Like, I've been in depression. I've had, I started at UWA doing a double major in psychology. I've done all these things. And all crazy surreal moments. My first day at UWA, I remember being in a punishment unit, bro, getting sleep deprivation by prison guards. That's one of my lowest moments. It probably would be that, 4 days of just getting mental sleep deprivation. They'd bang on the door going, "Are you okay?" And a cell, like in a cell that had shit and everything on the wall. That was one of my lowest moments of my life. And then I've been in the most pristine, pristine university in WA. I never believed that I was capable of that. And then that's another thing about changing your beliefs. What you think, you don't really know. Until you sometimes you're gonna ask yourself, is it because you can't really capable of something? It was because someone said that to you at some point. Scared. Exactly. Yeah. It's the fear. Fear holds most people trapped, and it becomes, and it's such.
And if you can't control that negative thought in your head, well, you can't expect anyone else to. You got to tell yourself you are fucking worthy. It's a hard thing to do, man. I mean, we're making it sound like it's a fucking walk in the park, but I mean, it really is hard. But then you got to get around other people, man. I mean, already having you across the table talking, mate, you're inspiring me. And this is what it's about. You've got to get around the people that help you get through these tough times and make you believe better than yourself. And
it's like Dan Pena always says, if you listen to him, he's got some good stuff on YouTube, but he says, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. It's like, you literally show me, so if you look for people I've got I try and surround myself with people that I don't really care where people are at, financially, anything like that. It's all about their character, spirit, if they're a good person, man, I've got any time of the day of the week from and obviously people that I find who I could look at potentially as business mentors and stuff like that. They're the sort of people that you want to gravitate around as your social circle, because that's just, eventually they reckon everyone earns between $3,000 to their closest group of friends. So it's free, maybe 5,000, but that's how close it is on a percentage if you do over mass populations and those are the statistics. It's crazy. So just. Not saying that you should leave your broke friends behind, but what I'm saying is, just be mindful that what people, someone's normal. If someone's on Centrelink and that's how they've lived, and I've been on Centrelink, so I'm not passing any judgment. They're just used to living with nothing. So that becomes the custom. Now I'm struggling on from earning 180 to 100.
But you're okay, man.
Yeah, of course. It's not easy, and it's there's lifestyle changes, but it's good, man. Last year, I never cooked a single meal at home. But now, I'm learning how to cook, and I'm doing things, I'm learning skills in other areas. Appreciate it, And I'll be honest with you, when you cook a meal and it's actually delicious, it's a lot more better than paying someone else to cook a delicious meal. It's you sort of like, so there's a lot, like just find gratitude and be happy in the little things, that's basically, what it comes down to. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to leave it at that, man, because because we didn't know, I'd said right at the start, mate, I didn't know what we're going to dive into, really. Man, I'd love to have you back on board, mate. I think there's a lot we can, even if we're honing into particular topics and stuff like that. But, bro, thanks for coming in and sharing that, man. Like I said, I'm going to walk out of here pretty inspired by the shit that you've spoke about, bro. And also, mate, massive credit to where you've come from too, man. Like, and this is going to be your strength. I can tell it, bro, sharing your story and helping those that need to hear it, man.
Oh, man. Like, at the end of the day, like, it's like I spoke when we were talking about doing this. For me, if it impacts one person's life in a better, in improvement, or it sends them on a different spiral or pathway, that's worth it. You know what I mean? Like, that's worth the time. Like, the impact that you have on others, man, is all it comes down to. Like, if you like, people minimize that, but if you can like help one person and that person helps two people, you know what I mean? Within a few, like, there's thousands of people getting themselves out of it, and at the moment they need a lot of this, especially with like the meth epidemic and crime and everything that's happening at the moment in WA. Not just the worldwide, but we'll focus on WA, Like, you need to have those other voices, the counters, because the way the world is, there's a lot of negativity out there.
Yep.
And you've just got to look for those sources of positivity and surround yourself within that. Yeah.
Jump online too, man. Like my website, I try to have I'm going to start uploading a lot of these places we can reach out to as well, man.
Yeah.
And, but thanks again, brother. Thanks, and I look forward to having you back on soon, bro.
Cheers, Dave. Thank you.
Mate. See ya.